Kelly Taylor.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my God, I'm so excited to have you on. You gave me the gift of being able to do your I Feel Fat Today podcast.
Yep.
Go check it out. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, I believe.
Yes, everywhere you get podcasts.
Everywhere you get podcasts. We had such a great conversation, and it was so lovely. For people that haven't listened, we met years ago when we were first starting out in a stand-up comedy class, which was so...
Yeah.
And I think I said the same thing on your podcast, which is that you're just like, sometimes you just look at people that are like, oh, they have it. And you're just one of those people that just had it when you went up for the first time. It was great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was so fun.
So kind.
So we've known each other for quite some time. And that episode was so fun. And we were just talking before, because the concept of the podcast that you do, I Feel Fat Today, is all about everyone's body positivity journey. Am I saying that right? Or
Yeah. The way I describe it is it's a show about diet culture, and
Sure.
I talk with comedians about their experiences with dieting.
Right.
The curse of having a body, a human vessel.
Oh my God, yes. And did we talk about Naked Attraction the last time, that show on HBO where people
We
date
may
naked?
have.
I think we might have, because it's very funny. We just my fiance, my future mother-in-law came over, and we were like, you have to watch the show. She's a little kooky, so she was like, oh my God, whatever. So we spent like 30 minutes just like watching this show about like just naked, taking in the human form and all of its flaws. It was really fun, and it's such a wonderful podcast. And I love you, Kelly. You're an amazing comedian, friend.
Stop.
I'm so happy to have you here.
Yes,
and you did the second show at this bookstore ever.
Yes.
Or was it the first? It might have been the first one. I can't remember.
It was either the first or the second.
I think, yeah, it was something.
And it was very exciting. It had the energy of a first show. So
yeah,
it may
right.
Have been
It was
a first show.
I think you're right. I think it was the first. Just because I remember I took a little break from comedy. I don't know if we had talked about that, but during the pandemic I took a little break, so I came back. When things were getting back to normal, and I was like, I have to hit up Kelly to get her on the show.
Oh.
And so it was so amazing.
Yeah. It's cool that you took a break and then came back.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about quitting or?
All the time.
Which, by the way, I know that's a dumb question if you're a comedian. If you're a comedian, you want to quit like every day. I think.
I know. Just really quick, does
Yeah.
my mic sound weird to you?
No. I can hear you fine.
Okay, cool.
Does it sound weird on your
It
headphones?
just sounds like I'm like in a wind tunnel or something.
Oh, no worries. You're coming okay in mine.
Okay, perfect.
So that's yeah.
I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah, no, we're good. It's
Cool.
We're on the 10th episode or 9th episode. We know our way around the equipment by now.
Yeah.
Which-
No, totally.
Do you, before we go into the quitting thing, do you like the technical stuff you have to teach yourself when you do a podcast? I know you can relate because you self-produce your own as well.
Yeah.
And it's, oh my God. But I loved your setup because you set it up via iPhone.
Yeah, I film on my iPhone.
Which is amazing. Which,
iPhone
by the way, if you're trying to...
me, Apple.
Oh my, yeah, seriously, get on this. Come on. And by the way, if anyone's looking to do anything creatively, do it on the phone. Like it's so, I didn't know you could do that. Like I went out and did all this research for this equipment and stuff, and then I realized it was like, oh, by the way, your camera can shoot in 4K.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I didn't need any of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you were to go to either my Instagram or the I Feel Fat Today page, the clips that I've posted recently are not a good indication of just how good it looks when I film on my camera. For some reason, I've been posting clips with comedian Daniel J. Parafan, and the video looks awful, and I literally am like, I think there was a ghost in my apartment because it's the only one that looks like that. So so the recent clips aren't a good indication of it, but yeah, if you check out the YouTube, they look great.
Yeah,
but I'm excited to see how this will look.
Yeah, no, I think it's, and I feel like I mention it every time we record, but like it took me a year to figure out the equipment situation, how to do the editing and everything like that. So it's been a very, very slow burn, but that's all to say we're happy to have you here, Kelly. And so let's go back to our conversation. Have you thought about quitting comedy? I know.
Yeah, it's like one of those things where I never feel like I'm doing enough.
Yeah, I totally feel you. Yeah.
And I feel like I'm constantly working. I'm constantly doing something.
Right.
And it still never feels like enough.
Yeah.
And there's this thing, I'm sure it's with anything in life, but just experiencing it in comedy, you see your peers chugging along, and they just feel like they're leagues ahead of you.
Yeah.
And it's so hard keeping blinders on and just focusing on what you're doing, So, but I have to remember that I started stand up because I really love it.
Right.
And I think I'm gonna do the artist way so that
I love that.
fall back into the whole creative part of it.
Yeah, and oh my god, it's funny because there's just so much great stuff that you just said. The first thing is the blinders. That's the hardest part, especially now with like social media and stuff like that. And it's just like constantly, because too, like, sometimes we'll post clips and stuff like that, and we'll get some really, really nice comments, like people that really connect with some of the stuff we talk about, and it like fills me, and it's like great and it's wonderful. 3 seconds later, I'm seeing someone's doing check spots at a club I want to be in, and I'm like, fuck it, this is horrible.
Yeah.
Like, everything's for nothing. But it's not really about that. And it's funny because I did a show last night, and I smoked a little weed with some of the comedians after, and I got way too stoned. And, like, sometimes, though, like, I'll just write notes in my phones. And one of the things I wrote, too, was, like, I wrote some notes about why it's good to do comedy even if you don't, quote-unquote, make it. So
I know, I think about that.
Yeah, and like Gabe Malika, who I open for sometimes, he's a fantastic storyteller, comedian. He said something which is really interesting at a show once, and he was like, it's not really interesting who makes it and who doesn't, right? In the sense of like, it's about the work you're doing and the stuff you're putting out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? After that, it's all out of your control.
Right.
And I think that's something that we need to come back to as people who like struggle with that all the time, I'm sure, especially.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like for me, my podcast is the first thing in my tenure of doing comedy. Because in April, it'll be 7 years. Now, the pandemic is in there. The pandemic is in there. But
Sure.
I did comedy throughout the pandemic on like Zoom and stuff.
Yeah, of course.
Obviously, it wasn't at the frequency I was doing it before the pandemic. And honestly, the pandemic changed the frequency in which I do comedy now.
Yeah, sure.
But in my 7 years of doing comedy, my podcast is the first thing that I feel like I can truly stand behind. Like I feel like
that.
I'm always second guessing jokes. I'm always second guessing how I'm perceived in the scene. Do people even consider me part of the scene? All those things that you tell yourself.
Every thought you just said haunts me.
Yeah, it's awful. It's awful.
And I love too, because what I try to do with this podcast is what you do with yours, which is that the mission statement is very clear. This is like, you put it out there to help people, and in the same way that we try to do here, which is that we want to remind people that like whatever you're going through and whatever is relevant to people talking about, you're not alone. Yeah.
I just wanted to make the podcast that I wish I had when I was 14.
I love that so much, Kelly. That's exactly, because what was the podcast you listened to like when you were like in those formative years?
Well, how old are you?
I'm 29.
Okay, I'm not that much older.
I don't know why it took me that long to think about that. I should know that off the top of my head. That's how I was smoking too much weed last night.
No, I totally relate. I actually had the thought today, like, wait, am I 32 or 33?
Oh my God. Okay, that makes me feel better.
Yeah, literally just today. So yeah, but I'm 32, so I'm not that much older than you, but I don't feel like there was like podcasts or anything when we were teens.
Really?
Right?
What inspired you to do the podcast? Was it just like, how'd you get into podcasts?
Oh, well, I'm
assuming you're a fan. Yeah.
Huge fan of podcasts. I would say for a while there, especially before I even ever did stand up myself, it was like the main form of entertainment I would take in, because it was something that, like, when you're commuting to work, you listen to, or when you're even sitting at your desk job, you have them playing in the background, doing mindless computer tasks. And so I just was always a fan of podcasts. And I haven't listened to it in the last year, just because sometimes that happens, like you're really into a show for a long time and then you kind of fall off. But I was really into the show Guys Be Fucked.
Okay.
And I just thought it was so smart, the way that they were able to have a show that the impetus of the show was them interviewing men that they've slept
really
with.
Oh, that's so fascinating.
That was the first, like, however many episodes.
Yeah,
the first, that the hosts, Corinne and Christina, would interview the men that they've slept with. And then it obviously, you run out of that.
I was going to say, like, do you have to keep sleeping with people just for the sake of getting guests on?
And I think because they like are, I think that speaks to integrity. Like, people that would never do that would never, sleep with people for content like that. I mean, to a certain degree, but we're all but human. But I just really liked how the show turned into them interviewing other comedians about, sex, relationships, you know, and if you're talking about sex and relationships, you're going to talk about trauma.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden they were having, you know, experts on. Dan Savage was on. And I just really liked how the show about sex and dating turned into this, like, you know, real resource for young women, especially.
Yeah.
To go to learn, you know, am I normal? Am I not in this, you know, regard? Or, you know, just hearing other people's trauma stories, especially as it relates to sex, I just really liked what they built for themselves. And I thought I want to have the dieting version of that.
And you know what's like wonderful is that I'm hearing in that too. You kind of watch the podcast transform.
Yeah.
Right. So like you from where they started to like kind of where they ended up, we're just like talking about those, you know, sex and relationships. And that's the other cool thing too is like for podcasts, like that journey in and of itself is also worthwhile, right? To see like what the conversations become. And, you know, to your point, like what the audience is going to take from it at the end of the day. That's incredible. Oh my God. I haven't heard of that podcast. What's funny is Sarah Barnett did this podcast and she also mentioned Dan Savage.
Oh.
So I didn't realize that he's a big like sex and relationship expert that people talk to. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is he popular among women? Or just like everybody
I think
in general?
90s moms.
No. Specifically.
You know, and it's like the trickle down thing, you know, a new generation of women inherited their love for Dan Savage.
You know what's funny is like, so my fiance works in American Dream and she just did Jonas Con. So like the Jonas Brothers did like,
oh my God, that's
a
amazing.
huge
Oh
day
yeah,
of,
that
like,
was
concerts.
just recently.
That was like, like 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And what's so funny to me is like, we're getting to a point where like, you remember when you were young and you would hear like your parents go to see like really old name bands and you're like, oh, who listens to them? And it's like, oh my God, that's happening with the Jonas Brothers.
Oh no,
right
that's
now.
literally me and My Chemical Romance. Like I'm
God.
like,
Do they still tour?
Yeah, they're gonna tour this summer.
Oh, are you going to see them?
I don't have tickets yet, but it's gonna happen.
You gotta go.
I've spoken into existence.
I'm not okay. Got me through many gym workouts.
Oh my God, so embarrassing, but I love it.
Were you very like goth growing up, Kelly?
I was like, the goal was to be as emo as possible. Yeah, in my Catholic school.
You went to Catholic school?
I did.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I almost went to
know.
Catholic school. I was like, I backed out at the last second.
That's the definition of saved.
Yeah.
Almost going to Catholic school.
My God. So like through elementary through high school you went?
Yeah.
Jeez.
K through senior year of high school.
What is your like relationship to faith? Like what was it when it started and then obviously when you left
I was in it. I was in it. I was part of the pro-life club.
Wow.
I was in, you know, chastity club and you know, really into it because I was a big rule follower. I feared my parents and I didn't want to break the rules.
Same boat.
You know?
Same boat.
And a whole lot of rules.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because there's the fear. Oh my God! And would your parents get like if you ever, like messed up? I'm sure they would like flip out. Or
Yeah. And it was like there was no trial. There was no trial.
Absolutely.
You know,
not.
I remember one time so vividly in the first grade, this bitch Megan kept talking to me.
Real name? Only real names on this podcast.
Oh, real name.
We're not good. That's
no idea where she is in her life.
We do not protect people here.
You know, send her love and light. But like at the time, this like was awful. So she wouldn't stop talking to me like in the middle of class. And Mrs. Lambasi kept telling us to stop talking. And I'd be like, I'm not talking to her, you know. And she just kept doing it. And in hindsight, looking at my first grade year old self, I probably just should have like, you know, gray rocked her, just like block her, you know, like don't even respond. But I kept being like, stop. And end of the day, I got a note written home. Miss Lambasi said, all right, I'm writing a note home.
By the way, worst thing that can happen to you at that age. That is with parents who you're scared of.
Yes.
Oh.
I sat there thinking, why did this bitch just sign my death certificate?
Oh.
Like, I was so afraid of my parents. And I get the note home, and then I'm getting screamed at for talking in class. And I'm like, I can't defend myself, even though I'm saying, like, Megan was talking to me. Well, then why did you talk back? So, you know, and it's like, you know, I'm alive today. I'm fine. You know, whatever. I probably didn't get TV for the night, which was awful because I loved TV. But, you know, it's just like little things like that. So, yeah, I was a big rule follower. And then classic case of like goes to college.
Yeah.
Has freedom.
Right.
You know,
What was
it's off the rails.
So so you're this rule follower, and in a very similar way, I was like also that conservative kind of leaning growing up because I was like, ugh, it sounds so weird now, but like in high school, I used to be like, I'm a Republican, but that was just because
Oh,
like,
same.
yeah, that was just because like, all right, I wanted to be just like my dad, so I
Oh,
was like,
same.
let me just repeat everything he says.
So
So,
embarrassing.
oh, it's so embarrassing, especially now, like looking back. Um, so you were like that right up until you went to college.
Well, I would say I was still a rule follower, still having Republican ideology in college, which is like the opposite. Like who was it that said was it starts with a W? Was it Winston Churchill? He was like if you're a liberal in college, you have a heart. If you're a conservative as an adult, you have a brain. I'm opposite.
God, that's funny.
And yeah, so but definitely because I had the freedom of like not being at my parents' house, and it's like my parents didn't have to be especially strict. I just was afraid of them.
Yeah.
Like
Oh my God.
I didn't have a curfew because I never went out. So
Right,
that
right.
kind of thing.
It wasn't even worth like testing the waters. Like it was
No.
just like no. And I was in the same boat. My father used to tell me growing up, and I'm working on a solo show where I'm trying to work this into a joke. My father used to say that it's better to be feared than loved. And it's like, that's Machiavelli. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's not parenting. That's like
Right. Yeah.
medieval, like,
Yeah.
philosophy.
That's like wartime.
Oh, it
thoughts.
was, yeah. But it's like, did your parents also go to Catholic school or no?
So my dad did.
Okay,
My
same with
mom
mine.
went to public school, and the reason why I have a joke about this. The reason why I went to Catholic school was because my grandparents, so my dad's parents,
Okay.
who were right there with raising us, said the kids have to go to Catholic school, and so that's why we went.
Sure.
There was kind of like no grandchild of mine is going to go to public school, like that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Right.
And my mom's like, okay, but we still have to pay for it. So, yeah. So, and that was the other thing. You mentioned you wanted to be Republican like your dad.
Yeah.
It's because he thought that was my grandfather. My grandfather,
Interesting.
is a very conservative guy, and it just felt like I got this sense that if you didn't agree with the authority, and so in this case the authority is my grandparents and my parents, then you wouldn't get love. And I don't think I realized how scared I was of not having love.
Oh.
So I think that's why it kind
Did
of...
we have the same childhood? I really like, and you know what's funny about that detail too is like it was also my dad's grandparents who like helped us raise us as well. Oh my God, that's so it's so formative. So it's like, yeah, of course you would follow the rules because that was your way of.
Yeah.
Oh, that is. So when did that transformation start to take place? Was it in high school then, it sounds like later in high school?
Well, I have to say that like being that I was into like emo punk music.
Yeah.
That was very anti-establishment or whatever, like because of and I feel like I was conservative in like the idea of like I would never get an abortion, but I'm like the gays can get married, like I wasn't like,
Sure.
Westboro Baptist.
Right,
but
right,
I
okay.
still was pretty Islamophobic.
Sure. I mean, but
so embarrassing, but like
yeah.
I can't pretend like I wasn't an idiot 15-year-old.
No, of course. And by the way, like, I think what's really great is like I appreciate that we're able to say like, no, we were on the other side.
Yeah.
But when we didn't know anything.
When you're you're a child.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't know.
100%.
And it's also kind of going against the grain a little
yes,
bit.
Yes, 100%.
Like
you're
all
like,
my friends were super
oh, yes,
liberal.
It's a way of rebelling.
Yeah.
Like within the confines of like the authoritarian regime.
Right. Like
in
I'm
our
just
households.
smaller. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just smarter. Yeah.
And exactly. You're like, I'm not like these kids that don't follow the rules. Like, are you kidding?
Yeah.
I'm gonna, be better. So that's really, really interesting. And this is so cringe. but you're bringing up a time like I used to go into homeroom in 8th grade. I think John McCain and Barack Obama were in the election, and I was like telling people why, like if I could vote for McCain, and I was like, he's going to switch us to nuclear power, and I was like, what am I talking about? I don't know anything about like nuclear power, and I remember that my homeroom teacher was so impressed.
Yeah.
She was like, "Oh my god, like nuclear power." So like it wasn't helping that it's like I'm not really thinking for myself. I'm just repeating whatever I see on the news that like my dad agrees
The Fox
with.
News, by the way.
By the way, yeah.
Like I also like cuz I feel like I've through healing and therapy I've like had times of beating myself up for like, you know, being however I was. And I had friends, and I'm so grateful for my friends because like they kind of stuck by me till I, got it out of my system. But whatever, I have to remember that like the background track to my childhood was Fox News on my grandfather's television, Rush Limbaugh on my grandfather's, car radio. And so it's like when you're young and dumb, you just take in all this stuff and you become the talk track.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's reminding me of something that Pete Holmes, who I love, says something too, where it's like, if I were you, I'd be you. So like when it's like when we think about judging all these people for like stuff like that, it's like, okay, look at your upbringing. Like of course you were that way.
Yeah.
Like you had no other way to and to your credit, like a lot of people stay in that box.
Yes.
Like you know what I mean? And don't make that growth and transformation. And we shouldn't be faulting people, that maybe I don't know, just don't wake up, but I don't know.
I think I like to believe that everybody gets there. Everybody gets to the place of not enlightenment, but like they get to the place of realizing their biases and, really forming an opinion about things. And so it probably, I moved to New York. I moved to Brooklyn when I was, it was 2016. So I would have been 23, 24.
This is post-college, right?
Post-college.
Okay.
Yeah. I graduated college in 2014. I was 21. 2016, moved to Brooklyn. So I was 23. And, just being a 20-year-old living out on your own, you're like, you just all of a sudden have, new background tracks, new talk tracks around you.
Especially in Brooklyn.
Especially in Brooklyn,
it's a stark contrast to where I'm sure you grew up. Are you from Jersey originally?
Yes.
Where in Jersey?
Central Jersey.
Central. We can cut that too if you want.
No, it's fine. Okay, cool. It's fine. Saraville, come find me.
Love it.
I'm not there anymore.
Come on out. I'm from Long Island originally.
Yes.
So
yes.
A lot of people
I get along well with Long Island people.
I was just going to say, it's Long Island and Central Jersey because I went to school in upstate New York at Binghamton. So it's like it was a lot of Jersey, Long Island people that got along. So
yes.
It's, so anyway, not to cut you off. So you graduate college.
Yeah.
Can we, I do want to go back just for a second because I'm curious, like in college, like that's where this transformation started happening then for you, where you did become, or was it more post-college, would you say?
I want to say it was more post-college because I got to be honest with you. In college, I had a focus, and that focus was hanging out with my friends and partying.
Sure.
And so I think that like you take maybe classes that like I'm sure I had a sociology class along the way that opened my eyes and that kind of stuff. So I think college totally and also going to Catholic school my whole life, I was not exposed to other religions.
Sure.
All of a sudden I have class with, people that are Jewish. My roommate's Jewish. It's just like, Muslim. Like there's all these other.
Right. You're being like. Yeah.
Diversity. There's finally some diversity in my life. And so I think I realized along the way, like, oh yeah, like, but again, I think that, post-college, living in Brooklyn, meeting new people. I think that's really what it was just all of a sudden having friends that don't have the same background as you, dating people that don't have the same background as you, that kind of thing.
And is that when you started comedy was around that time as well?
So I started comedy in 2018.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. So you had been living in Brooklyn for like a few years at this point.
Yes. I was in Brooklyn for 2 years and I had started comedy, and I really just started comedy because I, was overworked at my day job, and I just thought like I had always had this want, probably for like 2 years I had wanted to do comedy, but it's horrible stage fright, something I still honestly deal with now.
Yeah, I get that. That's
Horrible stage fright, and just feeling like, you know, you don't know that like comics go up there with an act.
Yeah.
So I
that's
would
a
like,
big, yeah.
you know, like, so I just didn't realize that that's what it was. But then through listening to podcasts and kind of hearing a little bit of inside baseball of like what comics talk about, you know, you learn like, oh no, people write jokes. So I had probably a note in my phone of just like 2 years of random jokes that weren't really jokes,
Sure,
but like
sure.
my idea of a joke at the time. And so 2018, I just went to an open mic, and then it was one of those things of just like, I couldn't believe that I had done it. I was so happy that I did it. And I just
Yeah.
was like, okay, I'm going to start doing open mics now.
That's
You know.
that's so incredible. And it's that first time you do it, you get off and you're just like, oh, like you're wired.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like looking back, it was like that was a room of like 3 people, and it's like
Other comics that hate me.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, 100%. And do you still have the video of your first time?
No, but I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
I had a friend, and that's always fun. I ask most comics that come on here and we talk stand up if they have, just because it's so fun to look back and remember. It's like, oh, we grow and we have grown. You know what I
Yes.
mean? That's always helpful, especially when we're talking about like those dark thoughts that we have
Yeah.
in the beginning and stuff. So
Yeah.
So Kelly, let's use this as a jumping off point, because
Yes.
we talked a little bit about before on Instagram about your low point. But are we around the same time period of where it is? I'm just trying to like set you up.
No, for sure. And, you know, I don't want to, you know, break the fourth wall.
No, yeah.
But, you know, when you said, hey, you know, come on, this is the premise of the show, I immediately was like, yeah, of course. But nothing, I was kind of shocked how nothing like jumped out at me
Really? That's
as like
interesting.
the low point.
Yeah.
Because I've dealt with depression my whole life. And I only realized once I started therapy how much anxiety and depression I had dealt with as a preteen and as a child.
And you think it's all because we had similar upbringings? You think that's all par for the course? By the way, you think it's just like, oh, this is how everyone's supposed to feel?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. You know, and so much of even Catholicism is just about the suffering.
Yeah,
you know?
and it's just about hating yourself, and
Yes,
you are
and
nothing.
penance.
You're nothing. You are
And
really, they really beat that self-esteem out of you.
oh yeah, you're born into this world with sin.
Yeah, which is the craziest thing, the craziest concept.
I know, it's so annoying.
Because it used to be too. Because my older brother, he was very religious. He used to want to be a priest. He's gay.
There you
Which
go.
was like textbook. I never saw
Yeah.
it. I had horrible gaydar, and like it was. I was shocked, and everyone else was like mad. Like, you know what I mean? It's like Catholic school. You know, just the signs were there. Not that every man that goes to Catholic school is gay, but
My older brother
probably-
went to Catholic school, is gay.
okay. Also, too, the straight ones that come out of there, I'm not so sure.
Yeah,
But,
yeah. You know, I've seen it happen, but
but he wanted to be a priest, and I mean, just his experience. I forgot what I was saying. We were just talking about.
We were talking about. Oh, I just talking about how I didn't realize that how much anxiety and depression I was dealing with as a child.
Right.
And I kind of do, to a degree, link it back to Catholicism, because so much of it is just being that, like you're born into the world with the original sin and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But yeah, so nothing really jumped out at me as what I would talk about on here. And, you know, I thought about times in my life in recent history that were really difficult, but it didn't feel like my story to tell. Like back in August of 2024, Joe, who is my boyfriend, we live together, we'll be together. We've been together for 3.5 years. His stepfather suddenly passed away from a heart attack. And that was so awful and so traumatic. And, it definitely sent me into a period of like needing to heal, but, experience for the first time being a partner to someone that has had such a devastating loss and navigating that, but still didn't feel like my story to tell. I think it was April of 2021. I had a friend from college who took her life, and that was awful.
Yeah.
but again, didn't feel like my low point necessarily, because for me, there's something about when someone around me loses, not to say that these people weren't important to me on a deep level, but your boyfriend losing his stepfather, who was like a second dad,
Sure.
your friend losing their best friend. There's something that, as someone that's kind of like parallel to that pain, where I feel like I have some purpose of like, now I'm here to help these people that are now grieving while I grieve myself. And I really just thought about, as it relates to me, coming on here and what I would talk about. And I realized that the reason why I was having such a hard time with this is because it's so deeply entrenched in shame.
Sure.
And so I'll go into it. So I would say my low point was when I just turned 24. My birthday is in October. And so this was this was September. So somewhere, going from 23 into 24. And I was out with friends, I was out with my one friend, my roommate in Brooklyn, and I got drugged. Now, I was like physically fine, like nothing happened to me, but I woke up in a bathroom in a bar, and it was the scariest thing ever.
Yeah.
And it's so long ago, it's hard to call on the details.
No, of course.
Yeah. And I feel really lucky because like nothing did happen to me. Everything was fine. But I do remember, because I've thought about that night so many times, and I remember being at this place that my roommate and I frequented. It was just a bar that was in the neighborhood that we would go to. Always had great times. And I can't remember if we bought the drinks or if these guys that were hanging around us bought the drinks. And I want to say that we were the ones that to buy these mixed drinks.
Sure.
And I remember dancing and having so much fun while dancing. And then my roommate and I looking at each other and just being like, well, that was fun. We had maybe 2 drinks.
So this is, and it's not even like you're like going hard or anything.
No.
This is just like a night out.
It was
have
just a
some
night
fun.
out. It was like a Saturday night, and we just like weren't, it wasn't going to be a 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock morning, kind of night.
Right.
And I was like, okay, I'm going to hit the bathroom, and then I'll meet you by the front, and we'll go. All of a sudden, I wake up and, and luckily the bathroom stalls were like floor to ceiling. So like no one, if they were trying to get me, could. And so, so.
Do you remember how long you were out for?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't. And,
was your friend waiting for you outside?
So she had gone home because I was
Kelly.
gone and not answering her.
Oh,
and she got mad at me, thinking that I had like met someone and went home with them.
On the way to the bathroom.
On the way to the bathroom. And I said to her after the fact, now everybody in the story has grace because we were really young,
Of course,
like
of course. This is.
I had friends that were like, you should be mad at her. And I was like, what is she to do? She's 23, she doesn't know, not that I would ever leave a bar with somebody and not tell my roommate, if I was there with her.
Yeah.
But regardless, it doesn't matter. She had left, and so everything ended up being fine.
Yeah.
Like bodily wise, I was fine, but it was a thing that happened. I was violated in some way. And I remember these guys hanging around, and being someone that has always struggled with body image. I've always been so skeptical of any man that has ever taken interest in me. And I think that I didn't have like antennas go up of like these normal looking guys were dangerous in any way.
Yeah.
I don't even really remember talking to them. I just remember us dancing, but I do remember this like euphoric feeling while dancing
Right.
that could have only been drugs.
Yeah.
Because then when I went and I, Googled afterward, I was reading that that's like some of the symptoms of a, a date rape drug is, kind of feeling like you're on Molly.
Right.
And so, yeah. So, now I have to deal with the fallout of feeling like this, violation had occurred. And so I had been talking to a guy, like dating a guy that, I probably didn't realize how much more I was into it than he was, So
Okay.
like him and I met at a bar, at the Jersey Shore in August. I think actually it was Labor Day weekend. And
This is like because this was around October, so like 2 months or something before?
so about a month.
About a month.
About
okay.
a month,
Gotcha.
yeah. And especially when I was young, when I fell hard.
I hear you.
I
hear you.
It's such a hopeless romantic.
Yeah.
And so I had been talking to a guy, and he had been traveling at the time, so he wasn't even in the country. And I was so afraid to tell him that this had happened to me because I felt like I did something wrong. And even if as I'm sitting here telling the story, I still have this feeling that I know is not true, but I still felt like I did something wrong. Like I wasn't careful enough. And like I was always the friend to be like, girls, cover your drinks, always that person.
Right.
But you just don't realize how quickly something like that can happen.
Yeah.
And so I can't remember the exact details, but like I remember telling him, I can't remember if it was texting or if it was on the phone, and he was like super concerned, that happened, and was saying,
was he
sorry.
the first person you told?
Probably. If not the first person, then like probably, within the inner circle of people.
Sure. But one of the people you turn to for support.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And, this is not anything I've ever told my parents, anything like that, because I just...
It's a good thing this is public.
I know, no, and that's the thing. That's the thing,
No,
because
but
I think about that with my own podcast of like, I'm putting shit out there that I feel comfortable putting out there, but I don't want like my family knowing about.
And
But it's like I can't live a public life in private.
I completely agree with you. And by the way, I'm so grateful that you're using this platform to put this part of yourself out there.
Yeah.
Because again, I feel the same way. Like I say stuff on here sometimes that no, I don't want my parents or like anyone that is that close to me to think or realize about. But no, this is safe. And again,
also this was 10 years ago.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like I'm a much different lady.
Exactly.
Not that there was anything wrong with
exactly.
her.
Yes. Right. Exactly.
but it's ancient history at this point.
Right.
And
so you talked to this guy.
Yeah, so I talked, and he was like super, nice about it, and it was like a feeling of relief, but still feeling awful, and having this feeling of just like, I have so many things in my life where I'm like, I could never tell my parents that this happened to me, and so like, it just felt like another brick being put on the shame wall that I've created inside myself.
Right.
And so then, I don't know if it was later that night or a few nights later, all of a sudden, he's in a different time zone. He calls me and he's wasted, and he's like calling me a whore and like,
what?
like just saying that like, how could I let that happen? Yeah.
Are you kidding
and he was
me?
Black. I'm not I'm not giving him a free pass, but he was blacked out, wasted. But it's like, that was his true feelings about what happened to me. So,
that's terrible.
And then maybe the next day, I said to him like, oh, you called me and you were calling these things. And he's like, I don't remember that. I can't remember if he said sorry or if he may have said sorry. He may have just brushed it off. but I was like so obsessed with him that I like almost didn't care. And I like, I having him as like this fake boyfriend helped me like mentally get past like what had occurred to me.
Can I ask how? Like, what was your thought process, if you remember? Like, was it like
Just this feeling that like this person doesn't think I'm useless or trash. Like this person doesn't.
So it was more like just general self-esteem.
Yes.
Like,
Oh, total self-esteem.
Yeah,
because
I hear
I hated myself.
Well, and we talked a little bit. I'm kind of glad we talked about the Catholicism, like upbringing in the beginning,
Yes.
because it's like here you are coming from this place of low self-esteem, and you're putting so much pressure on yourself to play by the rules.
Yes.
That this happens. And by the way, this is not like. The problem is, like, I hate that some people would hear this story and think, like, well, you shouldn't even be out and you should be.
Yes.
Like, some people are going to. But by the way, that's their own. They also hate themselves.
Yeah, and believe
You know what I
me,
mean?
I
Yeah.
said that to myself.
Right,
I was like,
exactly.
why was I out?
Yeah.
And also, I was no saint, okay? I partied. I was a
Right.
partier. So, like, sometimes I would have these feelings of, like, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Like, like, that's what happens when you party,
Yeah.
you know?
And well, and also, too, it's just, like, I hate that narrative where it's, like, like you're out partying, so like it's a potential consequence, and it's like
Which is, it's so awful.
it's so awful. It's not just because going out and having a few drinks with your friends and going to a club does not like that. It doesn't mean you deserve that.
Yeah, that you like by default should
Right.
be in the line of danger.
And like especially too because it's like we're judging it based on the result. Like by the way, I've done things that are way more dangerous.
yeah.
I once went to New Orleans. This is the stupidest thing I've ever done. This is so stupid. It's so bad. I was drunk and my friend wanted to smoke weed and there were these two girls we had met. So I was like, okay, I got to find weed. I followed a homeless person into an alley
Yeah.
where there were other homeless people. And they were like, whatever. And she's like, I'll give you this bag of weed for $20. I gave her 60 because I'm a great guy. No, I'm just kidding. No, I gave her 60. And then she gave me this bag of weed and we smoked it. Like that could have
Yeah.
been laced with anything.
Yeah.
And like that was like the stupidest thing. But because it's like, okay, like nothing bad happened, it's like, the narrative shifts almost, if that makes sense.
No,
Like
I totally. It's like, whoa, we survived,
Right. It's like we survived, like whatever. It's but so
Crazy night. Yeah.
and it makes it, I think, 10 times harder because you're a woman, right? So and
Yeah.
it's like when that stuff happens, because there is like this blaming of like, how many times have you heard like, God forbid something terrible happens, it's like, oh, what was she wearing?
Oh,
and it's
yeah,
like, that is not-
totally.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's another thing in conservatism. I remember who was the female sportscaster that was filmed naked? Erin Andrews, was that who it was?
Maybe.
So there's like a female sportscaster that someone had put a camera in her room without her knowing, and she was
Oh,
walking around her
man.
hotel room naked, as you do. And I remember there being a narrative in which it's like, well, why was she walking around naked?
Get
and
the
like,
fuck. Oh my
you
God.
know, and it's like, and I internalized that kind of stuff.
Right. And that, yeah.
And so I'm forgetting where I was. Oh yeah, he was awful.
Right.
And I was fine with not even like a take him back kind of thing, but like, was still happy that this guy that I was so into was like, still whatever, wanting to see me. And so long story short, if this is happening in September, early October, by end of October, him and I were done. He
Sure.
ghosts me. He ghosted
Okay.
me, which is a very traumatic thing. I feel like my early 20s dating history is just littered with the whole litany of ghosting on, men ghosting me. And so like I was so upset that happened because I really liked this guy and
Right.
I felt like he stopped dating me because of what happened to me. When in reality, we were a situationship.
Sure.
We weren't going to go anywhere. Like, even doesn't matter how infatuated I was with him.
Yeah.
It wasn't a thing, He was dating a ton of other women, you know?
But at the same time, too, like to give yourself some grace, like it's like you went through this traumatic thing and you confided in this person
Yeah.
and used them as that support system. And then the support system doesn't even give you the time of day when they leave,
Yes.
which is awful. I'm just like, I'm like making it worse. I'm like,
No,
I'm like,
no,
no,
that's
Kelly,
all.
this is not.
And I think, again, I'm looking back at, like, you know, at empathy with this, you know, girl that doesn't have a fully formed frontal lobe, you know, going
Right.
through this.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And, you know, it's like, I was young. I was so young. And, yeah, so then I am just sent into a spiral of depression, of just not wanting to do anything. You know, this was before comedy. And I just didn't want to go out. I was afraid
Right.
on some level,
Ugh,
you know, and which is like, that was my whole social circle, was going out with my friends.
No, exactly. Yeah.
And I'm
Which is even worse. No, sorry, not to interrupt, but that's even worse when you're depressed because your whole thing is you need people. You need to connect with people.
yeah.
You need to get out of the house. And here it is. Your guys are going to the thing you do, which is to go to a bar and socialize.
Yes.
And you can't even do that because you have this fear inside.
Yeah. And so it was like a slight agoraphobia, to be honest, because I was so riddled with anxiety. I like couldn't leave the house. I only left the house to go to work. So I was just back and forth to work.
Oh my God.
Now I was a zombie at work. I was a zombie.
Yeah.
And my job at the time was me and the founder of the company. I was like in one of those companies where it was like super startup. So it was just the two of us.
Ugh.
So I have a ton of work to do.
Yeah.
And I can barely do it because I just am like riddled. I think I wasn't even cognitively consciously thinking about this drugging situation, because you're asking yourself, was I really drugged? You start second guessing yourself.
Right.
I was mostly focused on this breakup and how awful it was, and going back and replaying all the things that I, you know, wished I could have done that would have made things differently, you know, which is total bullshit. Like, things would have happened the way that they happened, no matter what.
Yeah.
And it was my boss at the time who was like, let's go for a walk for lunch. And I was like, okay. And we go and we just go for a walk. And he asked me, you know, what happened, or not what happened, but like, what's going on?
Yeah.
You know, and I had started that job at the beginning of August. So like, we were new in our working relationship, friendship,
man.
you know.
Sure.
And I'm so grateful that my boss is just an empathetic, or my former boss was just an empathetic, in touch with his emotions guy, and had the ability to take this, you know, he was probably in his late 20s. I'm in my early 20s. And, or no, he was in his 30s. But asked me, you know, what's going on? And I felt comfortable to be like, this happened. I was at a bar and I got drugged. And he immediately hugged me and was like, that never should have happened. And it was the first time that someone that I saw as an authoritative figure told me that it was fine and not my fault. And I remember this feeling of relief that I hadn't felt like I had ever experienced before.
Yeah.
And he was like, I don't know if he said I should do therapy or if I said I wanted to do therapy or what it was. But he was like, if you want to do therapy, because I'd never done therapy before at that point in my life.
Yeah.
You know, I'm only 23. And he was like, I have a great therapy office. Let me message him, find out.
Wow.
Does he have someone else in the network, you know? And so that therapist gives me the information for this woman that would become my first therapist. And I don't know if I would be sitting in this chair if it were not for her, because my God. So I, you know, email her. We get it on the books to meet. And I can't remember timeline. Like I said, this was a long time ago, but I had that relief of telling my boss and, feeling okay about that. And I had this therapy session on the books, but I was still not okay.
Yeah.
I still was like, I was a part of a like the Brooklyn version of Zog Sports, one of those things,
Yeah.
like
the intramural.
intramural, just
Yeah.
friends getting together. And it wasn't with random people. It was like a bunch of friends from like my neighborhood in Brooklyn, that we would do this together. And I just remember them like begging me to come to, like, it was like one of the last games. And I was just like, no, I'm not going. And not telling them why I wasn't going, and my roommate was in it as well. So she went off and she did the kickball game. And I was at home and I was just in such a bad way, like in my apartment, just by myself. I didn't have a dog at the time, I was just by myself. And it's hard for me to really talk about this, not because it's hard for me to talk about, but because it's hard for me to even come to terms with what I, was trying to do. But it was the closest I had come to ever wanting to take my own life. And I don't think I would have seriously done something that would have been super definitive, but I, did have a few painkillers from probably getting a wisdom teeth pulled or something.
Sure.
And just having them. And I just found them in some of my shit in my apartment. And I can't remember how many there were, but I took them all at once and immediately regretted it. Yeah. Immediately felt scared, immediately wished I hadn't done that, but like didn't think it was enough for it to be, I also wasn't in my right mind, because it's like
that's the thing. And it's because I've had those moments too where, again, we talk about things that, you really don't want your family to hear. I've had those nights where it's 2, 3 in the morning and you just take a knife out of the kitchen drawer and you just stare at it.
Yeah.
But you're right. You're not. What's so sad is that you're not you when you're doing that. It's this other side of you that is completely different than you in your day to day.
Yeah. So I immediately went to the bathroom and I tried throwing everything up.
Right.
And I can't remember if I passed out in the bathroom or what, but I woke up and it was like, that was crazy. And I was never a self-harm person in terms of, like you said, taking out a knife and staring at it kind of thing. But I did wake up with cuts on my arm, and I'd never, ever even wanted to do that. Like, it had never been a compulsion that I thought to do. And it wasn't anything significant, but it was there. And I don't have a recollection of doing that.
Right.
And I think it was just because I was so lost and gone, and I just wanted to punish myself.
Yeah.
And I woke up that morning and I had my first therapy appointment after work that day. Like, it just happened to be set for the day after. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go to this therapist and I'm just going to talk to her and see what happens. And so I go to therapy and I don't tell her about this night. Like, I don't tell her about the fact that, 12 hours earlier before seeing her, I took pills or whatever. But I did, I talked to her about what happened to me and about the guy not seeing me anymore and how I've been feeling after. And really, after talking to that therapist, it helped so much, because I had, again, now this woman who was probably in her 40s, who you could probably see as a motherly figure, kind of, tell me it wasn't my fault that these things happen, and like it's awful that it happens, and we're in a culture that makes us feel ingrained to believe that it is our fault.
Right.
That kind, all that information, and and it. I would say that therapist put me on this journey of healing that I had no idea was going to be a part of my life, and I had no idea that I had such healing to do. Like, I kind of thought I was going to her to talk about this traumatic event that happened to me, only for her to uncover a series of traumatic events from my life that I never registered as traumatic. But an outside person would be like, that's awful that happened to you, kind of thing. And because I remember going to, I can't remember what session it was, but going to a session after being with her for a few weeks and kind of getting the feeling of like, what am I going to talk to her about? Like, we've talked about a lot. And then all of a sudden she starts asking me like, you bring up your grandparents a lot. Did you see your grandparents a lot? And I was like, yeah, we were there a lot, like on the weekends. She's like, oh, every weekend? Why were you going every weekend? I was like, well, my parents they worked a lot. And all of a sudden, she starts asking me about the dynamics with my grandparents and with my parents, and starts uncovering stuff that I had no idea, through no fault of anybody's, because everybody's just trying to survive, that I had all of this stuff to talk about. And I think also probably it was that therapy, that 2016, the end of 2016 therapy, where I was able to talk about a lot of like the conservatism and the Catholicism, and how that shaped me as a teenager and young adult.
Well, it is like, and this is the thing, I've also been very fortunate. I've gone to therapy. I don't go as often as I used to, but I went for a while. And in that same thing, the thing we used to talk about all the time, it's really an onion. It's peeling back the layers, and it's all so intertwined and connected.
Yeah.
And I'll give you like an example of like, for people listening, it's like I used to have dreams about my ex-girlfriend all the time. They would not stop, and it was always a situation where I was being rejected, right? So it was like always that kind of thing. And I remember meeting with my therapist about it. I was like, my goal in therapy is I want these dreams to stop. So we would talk about like things in childhood. Turns out what had happened was I had just used, because it was a traumatic breakup that I went through in my formative years, I had actually kind of projected my experience with my dad onto that. And when we dealt with those issues, the dreams went away.
That's crazy.
Isn't that nuts? And it's like, here's the thing is like, obviously it's good to talk to people around us when we're in those situations, but I would have never gotten there without a professional certified therapist who's doing their job.
Yes.
Right? That's why it's like so important, I think.
Yeah. I am such a big proponent of therapy, and I don't think it needs to be something where you do it every day for the rest of your life.
I completely agree.
That therapist that I'm talking about that was so transformational in my life, she eventually kind of fired me because of like an insurance thing.
Yeah.
Like for some reason my insurance kept kicking back every time she would put in the claim, even though I was
worst when that happens.
And like I did all the things that's so hard for a depressed person to do. I called and I said, is this person covered under my plan?
Yeah.
Yes, I got the approval. Long story short, she ended up we got to a place where we were like, after maybe a year of me seeing her, where she was like, let's put you on Lexapro.
Okay.
And then we'll check back in.
How did the medication help? Did that?
Life-changing.
Yeah.
I had no idea that I was walking around with just a chimney of bricks on my chest. And I remember it was like probably 2 weeks into taking the medication where all of a sudden I was like hanging out and I realized I didn't have this like low grade anxiety anymore. Not even low grade, like just this like background noise of anxiety.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And I don't even think medication needs to be a thing that you're on all the time, because I'm now not on Lexapro.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think that I feel so awful when I hear someone who is hesitant about going into therapy, try to go to therapy, and then they get dealt a bad hand with like a shitty therapist, because it's so hard to get people to go to therapy.
Yeah.
And if they have a bad, experience right out the gate, it's so much harder to get them to go back to it. And, so I do think that something like me getting kind of fired by this therapist down the line eventually could dissuade someone from like ever wanting to go to therapy again, because it does feel like starting over. It's like, now I got to tell a new person all this shit about me.
Right. And
so then I did take a break from therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So that was probably, I took a break from therapy and ironically started comedy like pretty soon after.
Sure.
And then I, thank God, got back into comedy January of 2020. I'm pretty sure is the date.
Okay. Gotcha.
And
so like right before the pandemic.
Literally right before the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I just was so grateful to have a therapist throughout the pandemic, because it's not that I had a tough time with the shutdown. I had a tough time with the going back after the shutdown. I was like, all of a sudden, I'm going to have to go back into this life that was so hard for me to manage, of like going to work every day and
Yeah.
Not that happened. I ended up working from home for like 4 years and I'm hybrid now, but still,
Sure.
so it's like you can have a bad experience. Not that I had a bad experience with her, but I did get dumped essentially. So you can have that happen with someone that you really trust, and then be able to find someone that you trust even more. And now my current therapist is like a ride or die.
And I completely agree. And it's unfortunate because my fiance is in that boat where it's, she has OCD, and it's not like, when she has, it's a disorder with her, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Right? It's just like, so unfortunately she's been to a few therapists to try it, and she just hasn't clicked with the right person. So, she's very strong and independent. So she's like, I'm just going to like do it and figure it out on my own. And to her credit, she's done like a great job, like doing her own research and figuring out what works for her and stuff. But it is so much of like, if people are considering going to therapy, they should like have the expectation like, all right, this is going to take time to even get started.
Yes.
To even find that person that I click with.
Yeah.
And it just sucks because it's like that process can take maybe a few months before you really like, sometimes you get really lucky and it's like, I found the right person right away. Like I've had therapists too for like 3 or 4 months where I'm like, okay, this is helping a little bit, but this isn't the person I need for this, if that makes sense.
No, totally. I totally get that. And like you said, therapy is like peeling back an onion, and there is so much work that I've done with this current therapist that has been so much more in depth of the original therapist. And what I was doing with that original therapist back in 2016, it was like blowing my mind. So it really can go really far deep. In the healing journey is expansive.
I absolutely. And one thing, and to bring us back just to like your initial low point, what's heartbreaking when I hear this story is that you had this traumatic experience where you were drugged and woke up on the bathroom. And then in a way it happens again because you take the painkillers and you wake up in the bathroom, and this time with cuts on your arm. And it's like, I hear that story, Kelly, and I'm like, I'm so happy you got help, because it's like I hear that and it's just heartbreaking, because in a way it's like it's this moment that keeps happening because we're not dealing with the core issue of like how you're feeling. And I don't mean that in the way of like it. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
no, I know exactly what you're saying.
I don't mean in the way of like you didn't deal with your core issue and that's like what happened as a result. I just mean in the sense of like you keep finding yourself in this place because like you're dealing with so much pain.
Yeah. And so like the incident happened at like, let's call it the beginning of September, and being in a place where I legitimately like was the closest I ever came to, I had suicidal ideation.
Sure.
Suicidal ideation is what got me back into therapy in January of 2020. But like this was a true like attempt on my life, but I that kind of feels like stolen valor in a way, because like there was no way what I took would have been enough. Like, but what, you don't know. I don't know.
Well, it's funny. Like I hear you say that, and even still, I hear the Catholic upbringing,
Oh,
right? So where
yeah.
it's like, no, I don't even deserve to call this like a real
And that's
thing.
also part of it of
No,
like
I
not
hear
deserving.
you. Yeah.
But so that incident ended up being in like middle of November. So it was just weeks of pure suffering.
Right.
Pure
And
just.
thank God you had this boss that
I
could
know.
get you connected.
I know. And like, because I don't think I would have had the wherewithal to find a therapist, and and so I so much of that pain I was in wasn't just about it. It's like I didn't even feel bad about the getting drugged and being in such harm and danger. It was the self-flagellation of, I let this happen to me, and I wanted to jump out of my skin.
Yeah.
And I had already had such untreated self trauma that I had done to myself throughout high school and college of eating disorders and having a horrible relationship with my body, that I was like falling, I was collapsing in on myself while attacking myself. And it was just like this Tasmanian devil of anxiety and depression, and all of my traumas were like bubbling to the surface because of this event.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's so hard because I like, again, just hearing you talk about it, like just the attacking yourself
Awful
for everything.
Yeah.
And it's that voice that you constantly have in your head that is saying you are not enough, you are not. It's awful because I'm also someone, I have very low self-esteem, and just it makes everything 10 times worse, because that also stops you from being able to deal with what you need to deal with. Like, you know what I mean? In the sense of like, that's where you need that help. I mean, it's so sad to hear, Kelly, in the sense of like, just reacting in real time.
No. And my hope is my hope is in talking about this, that there could be somebody that listens and relates to the feeling that they were the cause of this trauma.
Right. Yeah.
And just knowing that it really, like, to a degree, we all have, like, someone said this so perfectly on TikTok the other day, where they were like, to a degree, we do have a hand in our trauma and our suffering, because, like, you were there. I was in the bar.
Sure.
But that's not an indictment.
I love that.
That's just that's just the fact that I was there, and the fact that I was drinking a drink that something had gotten slipped into. Like, that's just what happened. That was my part in it.
I agree. And it's, I'm not saying it's the same thing, but it's almost like, okay, you left your house today and you got hit by a car.
Right.
You shouldn't have left the house. Well, it's like, okay, we could all stay home and do nothing.
Yeah.
Because there's danger at every turn, literally, and
it's very funny that you said that, you left the house and got hit by a car. My tendency to feel as if things are my fault runs so deep that I literally did get hit by a car as a pedestrian in New York City.
Yeah.
And run away from the scene because I was like so freaked out by it.
Oh, God.
And was terrified to tell anybody about that happening to me. And the adults in my life found a way to make it my fault that happened to me.
What did people say to you?
Why were you walking in the rain? Were you not paying attention? Were you drunk?
Yeah. And it's
and
like,
I'm like, I was not drunk. It was I went to an open mic. It was 7 p.m. in the evening. I was walking home and it was a light raining.
Yeah.
And I was walking across the crosswalk and the person was turning and they didn't see me or wasn't looking. and hit me and rolled over my foot and knocked me to the ground. And they jumped out to see if I was okay. But my adrenaline was pumping so hard, and I thought of all the ways in which that was my fault, and I ran away. And then I was getting, told I was stupid for running away from the scene.
Yeah.
And it's like, can I have some empathy for the fact that this happened?
No,
So
absolutely.
at every turn, it's like, your fault, your fault, your fault.
And I, in a similar vein, yesterday actually, and this is kind of like terrifying because even I haven't even kind of dealt with it fully. Like I was in the car with my fiance and my dog, and there wasn't yellow markings on the road. So I was in what was the other lane on the other side of the road going the wrong way.
Right.
But I was at a red light. So this truck starts turning, and is literally head on with us in the car. So my fiance's like, oh my God. And I like pull us into reverse or whatever. And I get out of it. And the guy's like, what the fuck are you doing? Whatever. And like, I waved him off. Like, obviously I was in the wrong.
Right.
Right. But at the same time, I'm like, I did look to see if there were yellow markings on the road. And like, I didn't know. I thought I was whatever. And to that point, it's like, I don't even want to think about it, because if I have to deal with the reality, it's like, okay, I completely blame myself that like I put my fiance and my dog in danger. Two things I love probably more than anything in this world.
Right. But it's
like,
the reality that you made a mistake.
Exactly. And like, can't that be enough? Can I be a person who makes mistakes? But because of our upbringing, we're not allowed to make mistakes.
No.
Because you have to be, there's no room for error.
Yeah.
You have to, I'm actually really glad I said that, because that does make me feel better, where it's like, you're sharing all this trauma. I'm like, I feel better. No, I feel, this was great for me. No, but in all seriousness, it's, we make, in that instance, it was a mistake, but sometimes you don't even make mistakes. And these things happen.
Yeah. You just are in a place that something awful happens.
Exactly. And
or whatever it is.
Exactly. And when you talk about the car accident, what's funny is I love my mother dearly, and she's wonderful, but I do, sometimes when things happen, she will be like, well, why were you doing that? Why were you, whatever. It's like, why? And again, I love her dearly, and this isn't her fault, but one thing with her in particular I've realized is that that's just her way of kind of coping with the information.
Yes.
Right? And I need to take myself out of it and be like, okay, this is just how she's processing what's going on.
I know. And it's kind of annoying, because it's like, okay, well, why do I have to tiptoe around your feelings when my feelings are never tiptoed around?
Yeah.
But I also have to remember I am dealing with untherapized people. So like, I'm giving them grace there.
Sure.
And I have gotten to a place with my relationship with my parents where I've done so much work with not only on myself, but also on boundaries, that I am happy to see them. I'm happy to go home because I don't go home a lot, and I know that if my mom or dad ever thought that I was in a place where I never wanted to see them again, I do have a knowing that they would be like, what did we do wrong? What can we do? I do believe that, not that it's ever gotten to that place, but like, there have been holidays that I've missed because I just like couldn't do it. I couldn't go home. I didn't want to go home. And because I did that work on myself, I'm now at a place where it's like, I'm looking forward to going home for Easter this year to spend the weekend. I'm sure something crazy is going to happen where I'm going to be like, oh, I want to go back to Brooklyn. But it's just, I feel like I have a good relationship with my parents because of the work that I've done on myself the boundaries I've put in place.
Which I love to hear. Have they changed in any way over the years?
So I think that they're a little bit softer. As men get older, their estrogen rises, and
Is that true?
Yes.
Oh wow.
And I think that has helped my dad. And my dad went through a traumatic accident at work, so I think that has softened him a lot. My dad was also drugged in a nightclub. No. But, I think that like life happens. Your kids go off. They learn.
I'm sorry. That was. Oh my God, that was great.
Oh my God. But so I think things are more chill, and I would never want my parents to ever listen to a podcast or hear a joke or something and take it personally or anything.
Yeah.
But I think what I'm most afraid of is them judging me.
Is there a part of you, I hear the judgment, but only because, again, we had very similar upbringings. Is there a part of you, too, that doesn't want them to hear because you want to sort of shield them and protect them from that information that they can't handle? I may be projecting here.
So maybe that's there at a level, but it's more about them being mad at me, which I've had to do so much work of like, my world's not going to end if they're mad at me. Like I literally have to tell myself like, nobody's funding my lifestyle that I need to like make sure I'm minding my P's and Q's. It's like, no, I'm the one with the job.
Yes.
I'm the one paying
you are
the
your
rent.
own person with your,
Exactly. Like there's no, I don't have a benefactor, because it's like, I feel like there's this feeling of unsafety that I am at if my parents are mad at me. But like, what?
Oh my God, no, but
I'm not going to get kicked out. I don't live there.
I still, when my dad yells at home, I still go,
oh my God.
I'm like, I can't deal with it. And if there's fighting that breaks out in my house, I used to, because I'm avoidant, so I walk in the other room. I still do that. To this point now, it's like, because a lot of times it's like, this is between them. If they need my support, they can let me know, and then I will intervene. But for the most part, it's just not worth the energy, unfortunately, and like, that sort of thing.
Yes. One of my best girlfriends is getting married, and yes, very exciting.
Very fun.
And she's from, we're from the same town in Jersey, and she lives in Denver now. And so like she has to get, 40 something New Jersey Italians to Denver.
Oh dear God. Oh my God.
And it's like her parents are losing their mind over it, whatever. And I was on the phone with her, and I was just, she was telling me about her parents arguing or whatever. And I was just like, something that has helped me tremendously is that when I go to my parents, I don't take on this responsibility that no one has put on me aside from myself to be the referee between my parents.
Standing ovation.
Because they didn't ask me to do that. I would only be doing that to make myself feel better. And who am I to get in the way of how they communicate?
Right.
I can't reinvent the wheel. Like this is screaming is how they communicate. And so who am I to go in there and fuck up their flow? Just because that's not how I communicate.
They're in it.
They're in it.
This is.
Yeah. And then it's like, all right, well, come on. We're going to go to Camillo's for dinner. So it's like, okay, we're good. All right. Yeah, let's go.
I love that so much, especially since you said referee, because personally, I've been called the emotional referee of my family by too many therapists.
Yes.
Like it's on separate occasions.
Are you a middle
too.
child?
Absolutely, I am.
Oh,
are you too?
Yes, I am.
Oh my goodness. It's
yes,
a responsibility we bear.
Yes.
Because you just want peace in the house.
That's it. I'm also a Libra, so I'm all about balance and justice.
Is that true? I'm an Aquarius, so I have to be
emotional.
Very emotional, and I have to be different. And that's something like I hate but also love about myself. I have to be different, even if it's in like little ways. You know, like I'm like, no, I'm not like everybody else.
No, totally.
Just so that's
I'm a conservative 6th grader.
I'm an 8th grader that talks about nuclear power in my homeroom. None of these other kids are doing it. They're like, this is
so embarrassing. It's so embarrassing.
That's humiliating, isn't it? It's like literally. But that was my vibe, man. I just wanted to be, and this is like the solo show I'm working on. I just wanted to be just like my dad.
Yeah.
And, that was, and again, but it was because obedience was the currency for love.
Yes. Oh. Yeah. Put it on a bumper sticker. That's what it was. That's what it was.
That's our merch.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're going to start. I love that so much. Put it on. Honk if you also trade obedience for love.
Honk if you felt your love was conditional.
I love that so much. Like people pull up next to you, they just start crying. Yeah. Like, oh my God, I love that emotion.
My day. Oh
my God. I
God.
love that so much, Kelly. It's just, I hear this story and truly it breaks my heart because I think it's maybe because I think one is probably I relate so hard because we had those similar upbringings, but two, it's like I remember there are just moments in your life where things happen that just bring up this total that just bring up so much anxiety and that just feel real in a way that, other things don't.
Yeah.
And I just, again, like I'm not being articulate right now. I'm just trying to react and, just trying to be here presently with you. It's just, it breaks my heart.
Yeah, and I have to say that I think therapy was one of the first times that I had someone react like how you're reacting now to this
Yeah.
story, and that kind of being a part of the healing process of like seeing someone react to something that is not normal, and
Yeah.
the validation that can give
Oh,
somebody.
it's everything.
Yeah, I didn't realize how important that was. And
Oh
so,
my
like,
God.
but there's this piece of me that wants to comfort you and being like, it was 10 years ago. Who cares?
Well, that's
Like,
really
we're
interesting.
fine.
No, but again, like,
Because
no.
I am fine.
Well, no, but also too, it's like one thing about that too is like, and I'm the same way. It's that urge to be like, it's you have this a middle child. You have to make this okay.
Oh,
Like it's
yeah.
okay.
The peacemaker.
Yeah. It's like I don't worry about me. Let's put
Mhm.
other people before. But to have that validation. And by the way, if you have friends going through it and you're not a professional, this is the bare. I don't want to say bare minimum because but it is something you can do actively to help that other person.
Yeah.
Just be present and listen.
Just listen.
And validate what they're going through.
You don't need to offer up advice.
No, not at all. And that's also, I think, because a lot of people feel pressure about that too.
Mhm.
Like it's like, well, what do I say? Sometimes you can just say, that is really hard.
Yeah.
And that is enough. You
Yeah.
know? So I just comfort me again. Tell me it's gonna be tell me it was 10 years ago. No, it's
God.
really something.
Yeah, and and I appreciate the opportunity to come on, and because I think it helped me kind of think about a low point and really like because it's things happen and you put it in a on a bookshelf in your mind.
Well, I was gonna say it's almost like it becomes camouflage in the background, like it almost
Yeah.
blends in that you don't even
I don't even think
notice
about it.
exactly, like you don't even notice it in the background of your mind, but it is something. It's like it's almost like if you were looking at like a painting and there was a big boulder in the middle that you didn't even see,
Yeah.
but it's there blocking and obstructing things. It's like we need to pick this out and we need to deal with it,
Yes.
which therapy has been for you, and it's
Yeah.
like it's so traumatic, especially because of that, because you put it away in the recesses of your mind and
Yeah.
didn't even deal with it for so long.
And I hate to play the comparison game, but like way awful things have also happened to me outside of
I'm actually, well, can I tell you, I'm actually really glad that you brought up that point, because we're in this part of the podcast now where I don't mean to get like preachy in this moment, obviously,
do
and
it.
I'm not preaching at you, obviously, but like, no, I've had the feedback. It's like, okay, some people talk about some people's low points are different. That's just part of the human experience.
Yeah.
And it does not mean that one is deeper than the other. We don't play the comparison game here. People come on and they share a low point they are experiencing. We don't measure how low it is.
Right.
Right? So it's just, but in the same exact way, anytime something bad or terrible happens, I'm like, you know what? People have it worse, which again is like, look, I appreciate that level of self-awareness, but at the same time, there is a part of you that needs to be like, no, it's okay. I feel like this, and this
Yeah.
is valid to feel this way, even though other people may be experiencing something worse.
Totally. And whatever you're going through, if you're listening to this while you're, going through a breakup or the death
Kelly,
of
that's
somebody.
oh my God, that's how we end. Wait. So wait, let me set you up because I think how
Yeah.
we're doing on time. Oh, we're beautiful. Okay, perfect. How we end typically is I ask the guest, and you got ahead of me beautifully because I love it. If someone is going through something serious, has this traumatic experience, or maybe not specifically, but something similar, what would you say to them?
I would say that you're going to get through it because you've always gotten through it. You've always gotten through the awful thing.
That's 2 standing ovations in
That
one
has
podcast.
happened. You've always gotten through the hard thing. Even if this is the hardest thing that you've ever could imagine happen to you, you will get through it because you've gotten through really awful things before. And all of this is part of the human experience, and don't place any value judgments on what happened to you, what you're going through, how you're feeling. All of that is man-made. It's all ego.
Yeah.
What you are going through is part of the human experience. You are but a human that makes mistakes, and universally we have no idea what's happening, if it's all chaos or if there's a life plan trajectory. We don't know. No one knows.
No,
unless you're Hindu or something. But you will get through this. That's the number one thing, and you'll probably be better for it.
I love that so much, Kelly. And something you touched on too is like, especially in America, and it's just, you are brought up through these like Catholicism and like all this other Catholicism specifically. You are brought up that is designed to make you hate yourself.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like give yourself some grace.
Yes.
And that you were brought up in a way that does not prioritize individual love, and so it's okay that people need to learn that to again, kind of get through that and all.
And always phone a friend.
That's so valuable. And if you don't have a friend, my number's at the bottom of the screen. I can't do that. I would get so many calls. I would be. I'm so popular. I'm everyone's first call.
Yourself.
Kelly Taylor, tell the people where they can find you.
Oh my God, thank you so much for having me. You can find me on Instagram at hello, this is Kelly. That's how I answer the phone. Hello, this is Kelly.
Love it.
And from there you can find all the other ways to find me. But number one, listen to my podcast.
It's amazing.
I have a podcast.
Start with our episode.
Yes. I have a podcast called I Feel Fat Today. It's a show about diet culture. I interview comedians about their experience with dieting, when they first learned about the concept of dieting. We have people on the show that have had weight loss surgery, people that have tried weight loss drugs, people that were really skinny and now they're really fat, people that were really fat and now they're really skinny. We also have people come on that have never even thought about their weight whatsoever, but they suffer from OCD or, depression or whatever the case may be. So check that out. Check out Matt's episode. It's a really, really great one.
Yeah. You talk about my serious mass that was 1,250 calories per serving, if you remember that.
Yes.
We talked about that. We talked about blood in my stool from keto. That's exciting,
Yes.
right? I'm not doing a very good job of plugging my episode.
Talks about it's great. There's trials and tribulations of trying to run a long distance after being hungover from a
wedding. Guys,
wedding
I go to the
party.
hospital.
Yes.
Cliffhanger. You're gonna want to know.
Yes.
What happens
You
there.
can hear the story of Matt preparing for his engagement to his now fiance.
Very
Lots jam packed with stuff.
Spoiler, it went well.
Yeah. And so that's where you can find me. And thank you so much for having me. This is such
Kelly.
a joy. I love podcasting. I love you. I
Yeah.
love this everything.
I love you too, Kelly. And go check out the podcast. Seriously, it's one of the podcasts that when I thought to set this out, what tone do I want to set? It's up there with
Thank you.
100%. And Kelly actually gave some of the advice that I use still to this day, which is that for episodes, they don't have to be perfect. Just get them out. Just get them out. I literally, when I was getting this together and things weren't going well, I was like, let me just take that advice. So you've been a huge part of like getting this started. And
thank you.
You're so funny, Kelly.
Oh my God. You're the only one that says that. No. I appreciate it.
Kelly Taylor, thank you so much. And
thank you.
Absolutely. And here's to hoping we left you a little higher. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Thank you.
Oh my God. I hope